kind of feel that way where it just keeps going and going. This is actually a very minor pullback to what we have seen in the past. However, it did go exactly down to where we expected, had that touch around 108 where we had some major support. And I believe we are right here within this candle in this orange line where we push up, have a little bit of consolidation, and then a major push down to test that 200 EMA. And then from that, a little bit of consolidation and immediate support off that 200 EMA, taking Bitcoin to the new all-time high, as well as the rest of the market. Jumping right over to Spell. I'm going to tear through some of these real quick because we did 30 seconds on that video. But Spell is building up very nicely. If you're looking for a scalp trade, it's actually not a bad point for entry. You could potentially scalp 16%. Maybe a little bit more, 20% if you have some extra cash sitting around. A lot of people are tied up and trapped within the market, but Spell for what it is, it's probably a pretty good entry at this moment, as we don't have a whole bunch of risk and we got a lot of reward to the upside. Keeping in mind this is a day scalp, not something to be holding a long period unless we are breaking over this downward trend line, which is very possible as well. So if you're buying at this point, there's no regrets on the way up, as you are buying at a very low price point for Spell. CTSI, that major pump and major rejection, and we see that the Fibonacci isn't correct because we have not hit our bottom yet. And if this is the bottom, the 618 would be back up here at 10.3 cents, currently at 7 cents. Getting rid of this fib and putting in the upward Fibonacci, the 618, we blew past that and we are moving in towards that one on the Fibonacci retracement. So that's still a possibility. That would also cause support with this upward trend line. And then if you miss that major pump on CTSI, you can actually be in for the next pump that is about to take place. IOTX, similar thing to Tornado, heavy consolidation, indecision. We don't know if we're going up or down with this specific daily candle, but this is trying to break and hold above that 200 EMA as we see it is struggling. But even if it has a pullback, that next push up should be keeping us above the 200 EMA. However, if we do not get a pullback, we could see that start curving upwards, and the ultimate resistance would be this 0.034 cent mark. But it is a very low point, and we see that once it does cross and hold above the 200 EMA, it has some pretty major gains just in this last pump, which would not be the maximum, about 100%. Zooming out, IOTX. Let's see, this last pump from wherever it first started in 21, about 700 to 800%. So buying at this point, it is looking pretty bullish to push up towards this downward trend line, maybe get a little rejection back in this area, and then break over it ultimately and start pushing back up. But at less than 3 cents, IOTX is a no-brainer. It's part of the AI and DeFi protocols, so definitely do your own research on it, but don't put all your bag into one coin. We have this support right here at $11 with Tornado Cash. We're getting some major resistance on this downward trend line. However, there is a bunch of support within the CM Guppy as we see it push through, test off that 200 EMA, and then had that major support pushing it back up towards its rejection point, which we are working within this area essentially through this triangle right here. This is kind of what we would be keeping an eye on in the long run. Staying within this wedge, not breaking underneath this point. Ultimately, this upward trend line is what we need to hold the support, which is right below that 200 EMA. But with everything going up, Tornado Cash is bound to go up as it's been consolidating in an upward momentum for a long time. And we see that when we have that consolidation and upward momentum, in one day it can take off. So if you haven't got it yet, you can trade it on MEXC. The reference is in the description below. Highly appreciate if you use it, and if you do use that reference link, you get $10 USDT free, which could be one free Tornado Cash, which in my mind I see as one free $459 payout. With that being said, moving over to Doge, clearly the 21 cent is our major support. As we've came down and tested it, got that support, we got our major rejection at 24. So this is the range that we are trading within. We could get consolidation over this black upward trend line. So we could still see it consolidate and try and hold some more support over that 200 EMA while that starts to curve upwards towards the 24 cents, ultimately pushing us up to 29 cents and beyond. And Dogecoin is said to potentially hit $4. So if you got 20 cents laying around, potentially want $4 for it, that's a pretty good ROI in my opinion. But keeping in mind, none of this is financial advice. Looking at AERO where we had our entry, we had our exit right here at $1.43 as it broke around this high and then had that continuation downward. So now we can potentially get another entry here around $1.17. The next stop could potentially be even all the way back at $1, which is 17% loss from that area. A little bit less because it's worth more, but with all that aside, we are trying to hold above this 50% mark on the CM Guppy, try and get a little bit more consolidation, potentially a test on this downward trend line, and then that 200 EMA kicking it up and out of the ballpark for Aerodrome. Compound, one of my favorites, even if you're not scalp trading, but you're doing some nice swing trades. We've had multiple entries and exits on Compound. First one being here at 46, selling around 60. We had another entry once we held that support right back at 46. Did not make it up to 61, but we had that sell on the way down as it broke the upward trend line. And then it came all the way down, built a higher low. Did that push up with a little bit of support. Got the wick off. We had our entry once it broke above that previous high. Had that push off. Hit that rejection. And then we had our sell-off here at 54, and that pushed back down. So here we are back at the 44. 46 was the previous time. So now is an even better entry than what we did before. But Compound has a very, very long way to go to hit its all-time high, nearly $1,000. And so Compound at $44. There are some other coins that are smaller cap that you may make more money because you would be able to buy more at a cheaper price. But for 44, comparing Compound to Quant, they're very, very similar with how quickly they can pump upwards. And then you just kind of wish that you bought in at an earlier price. So Compound being at 44, almost an absolute low, and zooming out to its all-time high, being all the way up here at $915. 618 retracement is 572. And you will see that quickly once we start breaking away from 44 and get over that $61 mark. Compound is definitely one of my favorites for just in between and learning how to trade in general. Moving to Quant, though, we have that support on the 200 EMA. Tested it once, tested it again. We do want to see this hold above that 200 EMA. Could we have a pullback if we see Bitcoin start to drop a little bit more? Yes, I believe Bitcoin will have another pullback and do one more shakeout to try and get rid of all the weak hands, everybody just accepting their loss before the ultimate takeoff, which with that, it is loading the trigger, pulling it back right before it fires, and that's kind of what I see with a lot of these like Quant, Compound, and a lot of the other ones that I have listed. We see that if this is a diamond pattern, typically if it breaks to the downside, we could see that push all the way down here to $80. I don't believe it would be pushing that far as we have some major support here around $90, which is actually around the 618 retracement, which is typical if you have that major move up, 618 retracement, and then push right back up. And then as long as you break over that previous high, then you can start seeing some higher highs. But right now it is in consolidation. It's nothing to worry about. It's just people getting in and out, scalping the money that they can. $102 to $110, $8 a coin is a pretty good gain for a couple of days. If you are not trading within that range, you are holding and you are waiting for that push up to break the downward trend line and start really getting over this 124 and holding and closing. The next time it gets over 124, you think, oh, I'm going to sell and buy at a cheaper price. That is when it starts to just push the opposite way. So just keep in mind, if you're in at a high point, you are kind of trapped within that area, as you don't want to be selling at this low point and you don't want to be missing out on that major pump. So with quant still holding the 200 EMA, it's still looking healthy as long as it is above the $88 mark. But quant, just like comp, has a very long way to go. $100 investment turning into $1,000 is a very good risk to reward ratio as well. BNT, one of my favorites. If you haven't gotten on it, you still have an opportunity to. We got in here at 36 cents. We are currently at 78 cents. We had a little bit of scalping in here, but with that push up, we're in that consolidation area, trying to build a little bit of more support, even though we had that double top, which I placed here. With that double top, it was a major sell-off. And I'm sure if we look at the RSI, which I will bring up right now. Yes, the RSI is consolidation with those two push, the double top. It pushed it down, gave it some time to get into that 50 RSI area down here. And then once we push up over that yellow, we could see some major movement to the upside. If we do not, we may see a little bit more of the oversold area, and we'd be looking for some support off this 71, 72 cent range. But if you guys just stay here for XCN, definitely check out a lot of these other opportunities that are presented in front of you, as they are some of my go-tos for trading in general. 78 cents on BNT, we're looking at a high of $20. That is a 20x. So if you're in trying to get, 18 cents on XCN, we are at like roughly a 8.18018 cents, I think, something like that. That's 10x. This is potential 20x for BNT. So if you don't know, now you know, trader. So see if we can get this to get a little bit more support, close over this 85 cents. Next stop is 95 cents. If it gets past 95 cents, or at least $1, there's not a whole bunch of resistance, at least till $3. So that's 2x right there, not a bad risk to reward. However, if we do push back, we could see as low as 65 cents before ultimately pushing up. Now XCN, the one that everybody skips my videos and watches specifically XCN, still my same opinion. We broke this upward trend line. We did that right here when we broke underneath the 200 EMA, had that little bit of a shakeout before a major push. We broke underneath that 200 EMA, and I think this is going to be a stronger shakeout where we have some support down here around 0.009 before a little bit of consolidation, more people thinking it's going to go lower and lower before it pushes up and breaks this downward trend line that's in red, and the 618 Fibonacci, we already passed that, so we are at the 786. The next stop is 1.00772. That's the potential retracement for this. However, the retracement from this previous high to where we are at 618 is above that 0.02 cent mark. If we do push down here, the 618 is still above that 0.02 cent mark, which means it typically, when it does that reversal, that would be the push over this downward trend line, gain some support, and then start pushing back upwards very quickly, as we have seen in the past. So we may see that further rejection with Bitcoin's push down. However, we see the last two pushes that Bitcoin pushed downwards, we've lost maybe 31%, but Bitcoin pushing down 15, 17%, and us losing 30% is not a bad bet, because this has a lot more potential to the upside than Bitcoin. As Bitcoin may hit, I want to say 250. Obviously I'm always blown away every time it keeps going up higher, but over 250, we're going to see a lot of these altcoins start taking off along with Bitcoin before it starts retracing and shaking out a lot of people or trapping people. XYO, again, the sleeping giant, still in consolidation, still trying to get over that 200 EMA, Once we break this downward trend line, hold this upward trend line, and cross over that 200 EMA, that's all green indicators on my part for the way I do my strategy. And if we do relative strength index, yet again, we are at that 50 mark, bringing back in CM Guppy. We see that it's just looking healthy all around. Get a little bit of volume picking up here, and we can start to see it pushing over that downward trend line, holding this upward trend line, and seeing a lot more support, and we may see it play out like Tornado did. So XYO definitely stacked a pretty big bag of XYO waiting for that pop if you missed out on something like 2,000% on XCN. None of this is financial advice, but bringing in DIMO from the last video that I brought it in, we clearly had a major rejection back down into the CM Guppy. We need some more volume, pushing this back up over the 200 EMA before looking for a better entry on DIMO. DNT, GRT, and I'll add in D-Force, I guess, why not? DNT, very beautiful chart, similar to XYO in the consolidation phase and building up. I explained a little better in my last video if you check it out. And if we push up over that 200 EMA and can close and hold, nothing quick like we did see back here in July 25th, an actual close, not even a wick off. And I got a notification for Bitcoin reaching the top of its cycle in September. That's a possibility. I'm not going to put anything aside, but DNT building up 200 EMA, close and hold above this 3 cents. That would be a phenomenal entry. Not financial advice in any way. GRT, similar thing. It's not holding very well above our upward trend line. We can always readjust this to something like that. But essentially getting over this 10 cent and this downward trend line, we are looking for a better entry on GRT. And then D-Force consolidation. Not really filling out that W, still in consolidation. It needs to get above this CM Guppy, and then we may see that pop towards the 200 EMA where we have some major rejection. But then if we get above that 200 EMA, that's when we really start looking at a more potential of a stronger entry. We are in a downward channel. We could see consolidation, a push downward continuation, or a push up towards this downward trend line. But if it does not get over that 200 EMA, we could likely see that push downwards. That's it for this video. Like and subscribe if you want. All references are in the description below. MEXC, Roller Coin if you want free passive income, Grass, KuCoin, Coinbase, all that good stuff. Good luck. Have fun with it. I will see you on the next one.